I'm Dave Haynes. I'm the opinions editor at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Welcome to the special edition of Fourth and State. We're joined today by the governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker, who's going to talk to us about the new state budget that just passed. Governor, welcome.
Good to be back.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. One of the items in the budget was an item that would outlaw residency requirements around the state. And just yesterday, the Common Council in Milwaukee passed an ordinance in which they agreed to fight that in court and said they wouldn't enforce it. So my question is to you is, what do you think the state's chances are in court? And secondly, if it goes that far, and secondly, does the state have any options to force the city to enforce the ban? On
the courts, I'm not a lawyer. I'll defer to lawyers at the state government to determine that. In the same way in terms of the chances. And we passed the budget based on the merits of the budget. I signed it into law on Sunday. It's one of those where in terms of any part of it, I mean, anybody could potentially make an argument similar. I mean, I get they're arguing home rules, I understand from your story. But in general, people could legally challenge anything, and we'll go through that once that time gets to us. But it's not something we put any more of a focus on than any other part of the state.
What about
budget.
the question of enforcement, and where does that leave employees of the city who might want to take advantage of that option?
Well, again, it's one of those we have to look at legally. We believe that the law I signed on Sunday went into effect on Monday. It is the law of the state of Wisconsin. Now, if people choose not to follow that, just like if they chose not to follow any other law that became effective July 1st, that's something that people who are in the legal world would have to look at. But I'm not taking any particular special measures in that regard.
Have you heard whether any other communities will join Milwaukee?
Not to my knowledge. I haven't heard a thing about that. And by the way, I did my research from the past, though. I figured, not on the lawsuit, but I went back and looked up your editorial on March 15th of 2011, which I love. It says it's time to lift residency requirements for municipal and school district employees, was the title. So I share with this editorial board, and I don't mean that to be pithy, but I think it's a good example that whether you believe it should be in the budget or not. I mean, the argument I used, which was the argument that you looked at 2 years ago, started with MPS employees, but went to the larger issue of public employees anywhere in the city. And the reason I put it in the budget, which is a legitimate issue, even though you agreed with the larger issue of lifting the residency requirement, was that similar to my view almost 15 years ago when I was a state lawmaker, when I authored the bill to get rid of residency for MPS employees then, when they had a shortage of employees, they do now, and it's probably an ongoing issue. And I thought the biggest piece of the budget that we have in terms of pure dollars is money that we spend in return to local governments, and the biggest piece of that is aid to schools. Milwaukee MPS is now the biggest beneficiary of that money. By percentage, it's one of the biggest recipients of state aid for schools in the state. And if we're investing that kind of money in our schools, to me, we should be giving them the tools. Just like 2 years ago, I gave all schools other tools to help with that. In this case, having the tools to effectively hire the most competent, well-prepared teachers possible.
And the superintendent agrees with you, Greg Thornton. The mayor, however, does not, and he argues we don't really need that tool. We have no problem hiring police and fire. So
and that's why
why
we
not
started,
just exempt the city?
Well, that's why we started with the 2 years ago. I included it in the budget, as you noted in the editorial in 11. I broadened it because I, in part, thought strategically from the legislature wanted to say if we're going to make an argument out, it should be across the board. I think philosophically, the practical reason was MPS is concerned. The philosophical one is, I don't think you make a great city by erecting a wall. I think you make for a great city, whether it's Milwaukee or anywhere else across the state, by good schools, great schools, by safe streets, by economies that are improving one neighborhood at a time all across this city or any other city in the state of Wisconsin. So I have a philosophical difference with it. I don't think residence itself is what makes for a great city, because there are plenty of other great cities that are similar in size across the state or across the country that don't have residency requirements.